Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my sketchbook. I am going to do a doodle or drawing or scribble or whatever you want to call it in relation to the Masters of the Universe once again. So a little bit ago, I did a drawing of He-Man, uh, or I guess Prince Adam laughing based on that meme. Um, I actually did get to see the movie a couple of days ago, and I actually enjoyed it. And I'll tell you why I enjoyed it. It's because I remember what the show was like as a kid. And I think it's probably best, well, suited for uh, people that kind of remember that or who have watched the show, even, people who weren't around when it first aired. If you were a fan of that cartoon, then you should be a fan of the movie. Uh, but let's see what we can come up with. Just for fun, I thought I'd do kind of like maybe my version of uh, Skeletor. And I don't know if I want to do, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Uh, I'm going to kind of make up something, I think, as I go. I'm going to try to make sure this stays kind of in focus and then go from there. Uh, Skeletor, as a bad guy, is kind of irredeemable. Not kind of, he is irredeemable. I don't think you're supposed to have a character uh, arc for him that allows him to be uh, a good guy. And if you get a chance to see this movie, you'll kind of see that, you know, not all beings have the ability to be reasoned with. And I think that's kind of funny. So I'm not sure where the kind of like hate or, I don't know where reviewers come up with things to dislike about creative endeavors. So I kind of stayed away from most of the trailers because I like to be surprised. I kind of stayed away from most of the reviews again because I like to be surprised. I'm kind of the person who likes to come up with my own ideas of stuff, and I'm not really going to review this movie for you. I will say this much though. Again, if you were a fan of the show or are a fan of the original show and the kind of zaniness from that, then you probably enjoy this movie. Uh, but yeah, getting back to the folks who have all the negative things to say, I figure that's probably more about trying to create. Hmm, I guess you could call it rage engagement, if that makes sense. No, actually, it doesn't make sense. Like, when non creative people break things down, it just seems kind of hurtful. Like, it's like, what is the point of ripping something apart? But you're allowed to have opinions. Now, I really made the nasal cavity kind of large here. I think Jared Leto as the voice without actually having, you know, him face act or use his face out there. It's kind of funny. I'm sure they did some version of motion capture. I guess we'll find out at some point uh, what could have been done with him in studio. I don't really know. But he's a very capable actor anyway. Uh, but yeah, getting back to Skeletor. So I guess you could say, much like He Man, I kind of have an appreciation for Skeletor in the meme world. And, and the advice that he gives and then he runs away. For some reason, I find that amusing. He's he's kind of a sinister guy, though. So power hungry, uh, unnecessarily mean. But when you're thinking as like a, you know, someone who was like 7 to 10 years of age, and you have action figures, and it's, you don't want to say that you play with dolls. Uh, these are toys that are, well, I mean, they are kind of dolls. And how do you come about getting a story with like overly masculine kind of themes and character names and stuff like that? It's actually kind of funny. So overall, though, I don't really know where I'm going with all this rambling on that I'm doing. It's just, you kind of look at things in a modern way and how you make it very much a part of who you are not to hurt people, especially in, bringing out the old fists. That's, yeah, you want to talk things through. And I think the way that they tried to make He-Man look and, to reason with bad guys and that sort of thing, it's a different sort of take. It's like, well, how much talk do you need to do? Anyway, it's a very funny thing to navigate that kind of stuff, again, with a character that's irredeemable. Some part of this looks a lot more. I don't know what I'm doing with this. I'm just kind of making up a thing here. And by the way, I'm always happy to say that I don't know. And you might hear me say that as kind of like an expression almost, that I'm not planning on certain things. I have no piles and piles of research or anything like that. I'm just speaking off the top of my head most of the time with this stuff. I have an idea that I might want to get across, but I'm not following a script. I grew up in the 1980s, although I was born in the 1970s. And Skeletor, as a bad guy, was not really a fun guy. They made him seem as if whatever he had going on in his world, he'd been wronged in some way. Now, is it possible that... Here's the thing. See, look at the face that I'm drawing here. It's a skull. Now, when I was a kid, it just seemed like, well, Castle Grayskull kind of has his face on it. Well, why can't it be his home? Why does he have to live in like a snake mountain? That's a weird thing. So, like, the good guys live in a place that looks kind of scary. Well, it's not an easy thing for our old buddy, not buddy, Skeletor to have to endure, losing week after week to He-Man, some muscle bound. I mean, all the characters look like this guy, right? I mean, look at this. Like, what kind of like keto diet do you have to maintain for the rest of your life to, keep this kind of physique? And those shorts. I mean, look at this. You can't really run around in this kind of stuff. I think it has a belt on it. It's like furry shorts. Anyway, it's the only, He-Man action figure I have, and it's a skunk guy. Probably not the easiest thing. But Skeletor, well, he's set up in a comparable way because, they kept the molds basically for all the bodies. They all kind of look very similar. And what was interesting, I only had Skeletor and He-Man. I didn't have all of the figurines growing up. Or dolls or action figures or whatever, however they tried to market this stuff. Because, they didn't really say dolls for little boys in that time period. So right now I'm just sort of sketching in what I want for the hood, and then I'll add a bit more detail or definition to it after. So I suppose they may be hoping to do a sequel. Now, sometimes that's very much dependent on how well this does in the movies, and, well, not just in the theaters, but I would say overall, whether or not it's streamed in a certain way, how the toys are doing, those things contribute to the success of the endeavor. And I don't think anyone involved in this thing were hoping to lose money. Uh, it could have been a passion project for somebody. I believe the person who plays He-Man, Nicholas, I think it's like it's like Galaxine, almost like you have Galaxy and then Galaxine. I think that's the way his name is pronounced. I'm not really sure. Uh, as I said, I didn't really watch uh, a lot to do with it because I didn't want to have anything spoiled. I'm trying to remember if in the original armor, uh, Skeletor has like crossbones. So in this particular toy, there's like an almost like this is like an iron cross that He-Man wears, which is kind of strange with his flowing blonde hair. And then Skeletor, well, he has this. I don't think there's a skull in the cartoon in the center of the crossbones, but no matter. We are going to kind of use a little bit of our imagination for this. Again, I'm just kind of ugly rough sketching a little bit here too. Kind of go with like some kind of bones. Now, I don't know if I like this face as much. It's sort of a primate kind of thing going on with it, maybe. I might be able to kind of fix some parts of it. Now, I think when Kevin Smith did another take on the He-Man universe, the first part had to do with Prince Adam perhaps making a sacrifice, and then, characters having to deal with his loss of sorts. And then there was supposed to be a connection between past champions and that sort of thing. I don't know if I like this that much. So I'm about 15 minutes in, but for some reason, yeah, that isn't really doing it for me. I I feel like whatever I did with Skeletor, it's kind of missing something. Let us flip the page here because, yeah, I don't know if I like that. I am going to another page, and I'm going to rough out something a little bit differently, I think. Again, I have in my head that He-Man and Skeletor, they should kind of know each other, maybe. That he resents He-Man and the family in some way. And so it's not just a power struggle thing. It's perhaps that they really do know each other, or at least the family does. Let's try to lock that down a little bit. So, I think Kevin Smith's version might allude to something else, like a family connection, a brother who might have been wronged, or something like that. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of creating shape. Now, there are some kind of ridiculous things with some of the toys of the 1980s. I think they went out of their way to try to create things in a similar way to what George Lucas did with merchandising Star Wars. At least that's kind of how I feel. I mean, there was such a great success with those toys. Now, for whatever reason, we're giving our good friend Skeletor a version of this loincloth thing, because those fancy shorts, the furry underwear is unnecessary. Not that Skeletor would really care. But, let's see. So, the face of Skeletor, in my opinion, is more like a floating apparition than anything else. So you don't really get to see the sides of his skull. It would be just a thing that's kind of inside a hood. And unlike other heroes, his physical strength is not tied necessarily to his look. Like Superman is a large, imposing person anyway, sort of like if you looked at him as Clark Kent, his physical strength really isn't tied to his physicality. Like Wonder Woman is exceptionally strong, and of course she would be built like a warrior anyway. but her muscle strength really wouldn't be part of, yeah, her overall strength. Like Superman wouldn't be lifting weights to get max out built. I don't know. I'm going to end up adding some strange details to this, I think, as I go. Let's see. Wow, the scent of the stink ore. Just having that thing near me, I'm telling you, it's brutal. I think it's mixed with like a patchouli oil in the plastic, and after 40 plus years, it really is still living on. Let's see. I'll have that. Make sure the serratus anteriors are doing what they're doing to support the rib cage and the obliques and deltoids back here. And look at those shoulders. Okay. Sorry about the change up in the drawing part. That happens every so often, where you just kind of want to move on from something. Maybe I want this to be a little bit more prominent down here, I think. Instead of having like a Superman S, kind of the bones here, maybe. Now, let us add in some better detail. Nasal cavity would go rather high after the cartilage of the face had deteriorated. The upper mandible and teeth. And how do you get a character to smile if they don't have lips? Well, you got to curve some bones. Maybe we'll have an eyebrow slightly raised. And I don't know if I want to have I'll leave room just in case. Eyeball glowing eyes or something in there. I don't know yet. Skeletor didn't really have that, but his eyes sockets would kind of change a little bit to show expression. Kind of Halloween-y in some ways. So yeah, we wouldn't necessarily see the neck bones. As I said, I picture more of having a face of an apparition. I wonder if there'll be like theme park appearances of the He-Man, Skeletor, or Fisto, or Ram Man, or whatever characters. Anyway, that stuff's funny. And we'll have to see if there's going to be other movies. And if you haven't seen it and you're going to see it, I recommend staying through the credits right to the very end. Much like other movies, like, the Marvel movies, for example. You miss out on stuff if you just get up and walk out of the theater. They like to put in these end credit things a lot of times, especially in action movies and stuff too. This movie's no exception for doing that. It'd be funny if... Actually, you know what? I'm not going to give anything away. We'll let the movie stay out long enough for people to watch it. It was like the first little while when the movie The Sixth Sense came out. You did your best not to wreck the big twists from that. So we'll let this live that way. Now this thing is kind of like a ram's head. I shouldn't say kind of like it is. It is a ram's head. On a stick. Not like a pogo. Okay. I think it would be kind of fun, actually, to see if I can... Well, maybe that'll be the next video, but I maybe draw a different version of Skeletor. Just because I think it would be kind of fun to do. So like, I don't know, maybe not a teddy bear version, but maybe something a little bit different. So that's something maybe I'll think about during the day, and maybe try to come up with something for tomorrow morning's doodle. There's something fun, and I know I often will start a statement like that. When you have a character, especially a bad guy, why they feel the need to just run their mouths when it comes to the plans that they have. Like, it's almost like they need this sort of acknowledgement. Like, I guess we kind of would joke about the way Bond villains would be like, well, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Uh, you'll never get out to stop me, but I might as well just let you know what my plan is. It's like, what was the point of this? You gotta keep this to yourself until it's done. Anyway, it's funny. Trope, I suppose, is what you might call that. Another thing that I think is great for moving a story along is when you have two characters talk about what the plan is going to be, and that saves them from having to, film the backstories or anyway. There's a name for that sort of thing, which eludes me at the moment. Um, it's like not exploitation. It's a phrase that's similar in my head. Um, anyway, but yeah, it's a way of moving a story along without actually having to film all that stuff. Anyway, I'll think of it. Bit of an armpit here. Just doing a little bit of an outline now. Make sure that the belt is doing whatever the belt is supposed to be doing. The unnecessary abs of our friend, not our friend. And a belly button. Do we need a belly button? Does he have an Audi? Anyway. Skeletor. Let's add a bit more unelegant things here. Exposition. That's what it's called, which is a way to talk through major plot points. Um, you'll notice that in TV shows a lot as well, where they don't have to go into great detail as to why this person or that person or why this thing is happening. It's just it's a way of moving the story along to bring everyone else as you up the viewer up to speed, I should say. You, the viewer, up to speed gets brought up by this exposition of the story. It's actually kind of clever, actually. My goodness. So in this new He-Man movie, they actually managed to give you a little bit of the origin, which for some people I'm sure was unnecessary. But every time they come out with another Spider-Man movie, other than the latest Spider-Man, they didn't really go into the detail. Like sometimes they kind of talk their way through, again, exposition, I suppose, of how he would have got his powers. But when there's a new Batman, when there's a new whatever, they want to give their take on how that character came about, and this movie's no real exception, I suppose, as to the origins of He-Man and even the names of some of the characters, which they kind of dance around. I mean, how do you come up with a name like He-Man in 2026? Well, you struggle. That's how you come up with that name. As you can see here in the hand that I drew, I have an unnecessary pinky exposed because that's the best way to hold stuff. And it's because I think it's funny. So this video should have been a lot shorter had I started with that, I think. For fun, I'm going to make these eyes slightly bigger. I did kind of want to have them squint out maybe or something like that. And I want there to be at least a hint that he's kind of smiling a little bit. All right then, folks. I think that is going to be it. As I said, I may do one last thing for tomorrow morning's doodle in relation to Skeletor, and maybe just a different take on it or something like that. I don't know right off the top of my head. Yeah. But again, for the few who watch the long form videos, thank you very much for watching the long form videos. Yeah, and thank you. And we'll see you again soon, I think. All right, folks, have a great day. Let me do a couple of other things here. You can subscribe if you wish. I will throw that in very quickly. You can comment, please. That's cool if you do that, mainly because it gives me the opportunity to chat back. I don't know why I'm putting in the fuzzy pants here. That seems a little weird. I just kind of felt like I needed to do that. It's really weird. Unnecessarily weird, actually. I don't know why I put that in very quickly. Ooh. Yeah, I don't like the fuzzy pants. Maybe it needs to be slightly more controlled. Yeah, that was a weird thing that I just did. All right. It's always a fun thing to just not be able to put down the pen. I'm going to put it down. A little bit of whatever going on with this. All right. Ciao for now.